The December Comfort Watches 2025 Day 1 K-Pop Demon Hunters. A couple of years ago, I did a series of movie reviews about the movies I enjoy rewatching. Not the best movies of all time, or the most important movies, but the ones I'm happy to spend time with, and which I put on when I want to revisit that world, or the characters, or when that film has something about it that resonates for me. Because I wrote this series in December, which is also the month I generally have time to slump on the couch and actually watch a bunch of movies, I called the series the December Comfort Watches, one a day for the whole month. Now that it's December again, and I still have a bunch of other movies I like watching that I want to write about, I thought I'd do a second run of the series. 31 new movies, not actually new movies, but new to the series. And what about them makes them so rewatchable? And to start us off, let me pick the actual newest movie to this list, K-Pop Demon Hunters. It's safe to say no one expected K-Pop Demon Hunters. Certainly Sony Animation didn't. Rather than release the movie theatrically, they shunted it over to Netflix as part of a COVID-era distribution deal, which, while covering Sony's production costs and adding a little extra for profit, meant that the movie's financial upside would be capped for the studio. Not great for Sony, but great for Netflix, or it would have been, had Netflix done any actual thing to promote the movie. It really didn't. There was no buzz whatsoever for the movie when it slipped onto the service on June 20, 2025. If I were the filmmakers, particularly directors Maggie Kang and Chris Applehands, I would have been tearing my hair out about this. Years of work, and then your baby is just sort of plopped out onto the streaming sidewalk, to live or die, whichever. In this one case, however, this institutional, if not neglect, then at least indifference meant that K-pop Demon Hunters could become a thing that is so rarely seen anymore as to be near miraculous. An actual grassroots, word-of-mouth hit. The sort where the people who have found it sort of climb over each other to tell all their friends about it. And then they tell their friends, and so on, and so on. By August, K-Pop Demon Hunters was a sensation. By September, it was an actual phenomenon, becoming Netflix's most-watched movie ever and ruling the Billboard and international single and album charts until Taylor Swift came along in October to ruin their fun. By now, the story of the film is known to everyone not living under a literal rock. The K-pop band Hunter/X, pronounced Huntrix, is a chart-topping girl group with a powerhouse belter Rumi, a drop-dead sarcastic choreographer, Mira, and a bubbly, goofy lyricist, Zoe, with millions of fans, and the sort of skyscraper penthouse apartment that would Tony Stark to shame. They also, in their spare time, keep the human world safe from an onslaught of underworldly demons, first by using their songs to strengthen a force field called the Han Moon that keeps most of the demons sealed off, and then by brutally, but bloodlessly, this is a family film, slaughtering any demons that do manage to slip through. All of this is covered in the film's frankly terrific first act, which has the group fighting a pack of demons on the airplane taking them to their final world tour show. The demons have taken over the plane, all the better to murder the band, but the band is having none of that. So then the demons tear up the plane, which again does not work the way they want it to. In a few short minutes, we understand the concept and the stakes, get acquainted with our heroes, and get the broad strokes of their personalities, and then get a music video with a bangin' Meet the Band tune that also doubles as a tightly choreographed fight scene, which is also funnier than I think anyone could have reasonably expected it to be. All of this certainly took me by surprise when I say the movie for the first time in June. After having watched that introductory sequence and being knocked out by it, I was actually angry at Netflix and Sony for not banging the drum about this movie and leaving me to find out about it from Reddit, of all places. In retrospect, this ended up not being a problem for the movie, but at the time it seemed unfathomable that something this good, this smartly assembled and designed, would just be left for people to find or not. If you want to argue with me that Netflix did know what it had on its hands, let me offer you the one piece of evidence they did not. For the first few months of the movie's existence, there was close to zero actual licensed merchandise. Sure, you could get K-Pop Demon Hunters t-shirts and merch. It was just all unauthorized. Netflix is still catching up on this stuff. At least they were smart enough to release a sing-along version to theaters a couple months after release, which netted the streamer roughly $20 million in nearly pure profit. K-pop Demon Hunters functions fabulously as an action-oriented animated musical, but what makes it rewatchable are the character interactions. First, and most notably, the relationship between Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, all of whom are allowed to be flawed. Rumi is a controlling workaholic. Mira is a barely contained rage monster. Zoe is an ad-brained chipmunk, but all of whom actually love each other and who mostly understand that together, they are more than the sum of their parts. It's weird, and possibly tragic, that it takes an animated movie to show us a trio of young women who are allowed to be less than perfect, that is, when they're not saving the world and slash or being the biggest pop group on the planet. But wait, there's a whole other subplot with its own relationship drama. That's between Rumi and Jinu, the latter being the leader of a boy band made of demons. Yes, who come to Earth to steal Hunter/X's fans so the honeymoon will remain unsealed. I'm not going to over-explain it here. It makes sense when you watch it. Rumi and Jinu both have their secrets, a fact which ends up creating the most adorable trauma bond ever, complete with an emotion-laden yet deeply chaste love song duet. It's the stuff fan mashups are made of, a thing the film is very much aware of. Indeed, another thing the film does a very good job of showing is the fan/band dynamic, and what it means to be a pop star here in the third decade of 2025. Observers more knowledgeable than I have praised how the movie is deeply rooted into the specific setting of Korea and its pop culture. The movie takes place in that nation, a fact which vaguely astounds me. I assume someone somewhere had to resist a corporate note to move the action to the us, and good for them to have done so. I'm willing to accept their word that the movie is Korean at heart, and yet there is enough about the pop culture dynamic that is universal that even a relative newbie to K-pop, as myself, understands the currents these characters are swimming in. It would be a little much to say any of this is realistic, but then, this is a movie with demons. It's okay for it to be a fable. There's so much of this movie that feels like a fable, not confined to the actual story on the screen. For example, the story of Ija, who wrote several of the movie's songs, including the global #1 hit Golden, and who provided the singing voice for Rumi, in the process astounding legions of YouTube music vloggers by being able to hit a 5-note like it was no big deal. EJ spent years in the K-pop ecosystem, training to become part of a K-pop band, and never quite making it and eventually leaving that world behind. And now here she is, having co-written and performed arguably the biggest K-pop song ever, certainly the biggest K-pop song featuring a girl band, on Golden, and other Hunter/X songs. EJ sings with Audrey Nuna and Ray Amy, who provide the singing voices of Mira and Zoe, respectively. It's a story as compelling as the story of the movie, and inextricably intertwined with it. Again, safe to say no one expected K-pop Demon Hunters, and yet here, less than 6 months after its release, it's hard to think of 2025 without it. It's the year's actual pop phenomenon, one that wasn't forced on us, or that tens of millions of dollars were spent to make happen. It happened because people just plain liked it, liked the movie, liked the music, liked the characters, and liked the way it made them feel. How often do we get that anymore? Not enough? I'd like it again sometime. In the meantime, K-pop Demon Hunters will do.